Well, shalom, shalom. I'm Barbara, and I'm always short and sweet. What is a pagan, and who do they worship? Well, what is a pagan? The Oxford Dictionary says a person who holds religious beliefs that are not part of any of the world's main religions. Well, if this is the definition you use for pagan, it is wrong, because it doesn't give the full understanding. In the Bible, nations who served many gods were called pagans. Israel served one God. Paganism is a term first used in the 4th century for early Christians, for people in the Roman Empire who practiced polytheism. Polytheism is the worship of many gods. And now their definition here, a vocabulary definition from dictionary, says a person who follows a polytheistic or pre-Christian religion, and that would be not a Christian or Muslim or Jew. And the types of pagans would be a Wiccan, witch, a believer, and Wicca. Synonyms are Gentile, heathen, infidel. So pagans are people who worship many other gods. Israel worshiped one God, Yahweh, and when you worship one God, that's monotheistic. And so Israel was the only monotheistic nation. Yahweh made a covenant with his people. He gave them laws and commandments and statutes that separated them from every other nation in the world, and they were always to be a special people and set apart to him. Yes, pagans are polytheistic and they worship many gods, but this is an understanding that must go deeper because they have a hierarchy in their system, and they have a structure of a trinity, a father god, a mother goddess, and son of God. And this trinity is known as the sun god, the moon goddess, and the reborn sun god. Well, depending on the empire and the culture, all these nations have similar names and similar gods throughout history. They just changed the names, but it's basically the same trinity. The Egyptians are the most well-known pagan empire. So we'll understand the basics of paganism through Egypt. Ra is the sun god, so he is the top of their trinity. The Egyptian father god was Osiris, the mother god was Isis, and their son was Horus, and this was the pagan trinity. Isis was the moon goddess. Often she's represented with two different themes, the moon and fertility. And Osiris, he was the Egyptian father god, and he was attached to death or the underworld. And then this divine sun god was Horus. The divine child you often will see with the sun, and often depicted in this type of imagery of what we now call the Madonna and Child. The divine child is the reborn sun god, and he was born on December 21st, which is known as the winter solstice. The time of the winter solstice is known as the rebirth of the sun. Ashtaroth is the moon goddess, and the mother goddess for both Babylon and Assyria is Ishtar. The sun god had different names in Babylon and Assyria, Marduk and Ashur. Tammuz is the son of God in Babylon and Assyria. The ancient Babylonian religion celebrated the conception of Tammuz on the first day after the full moon following the spring equinox, and that's how we get the date for Easter. They celebrated it by baking cakes to Ishtar, getting drunk, engaging in sex orgies and prostitution in the temple of Ishtar. So Ezekiel 8:14 talks about Tammuz, when he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of Yahweh, and I saw women sitting there weeping for the god Tammuz. And this is a video that I did. I hope you will go and watch this one. Who is Tammuz? Who is the queen of heaven? Well, here's a verse, Jeremiah 7:18. The children gather wood, and the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the queen of heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger. Jeremiah 7:18, and the women knead dough to make cakes for the queen of heaven. something like hot cross buns. There's a cross on them for a reason. And the women added, this is Jeremiah 44:19, when we baked cake shaped like the Queen of Heaven, offered sacrifices to her, and poured out wine offerings to her, our husbands approved of what we were doing. In the Bible, a pagan was an individual born outside the nation of Israel that was lawless. He was lawless according to Yahweh, our Creator, His standards, His ways, and His Torah. They worshiped many gods. Their main gods were in a trinity of Father God, Mother God, and Son God, and they were lawless. Well, what makes it pagan? It means it is something that came from men who decided this was the way they were going to honor their gods, and it all points back to the worship and celebration and belief in Lucifer. Once you have this knowledge, as you go through the history, you can build on it. People often like to say that these pagan beliefs and practices have nothing to do with the Bible and that they don't matter. These people are either trying to deceive you intentionally or they're just spreading their deception. Well, it's all over the internet. People are saying Christmas is not a pagan holiday and Valentine's is not after the festivity of Lupercalia and Easter is not a pagan holiday. But these all have pagan roots, and they are watering down the history on the internet. Without the knowledge of the Bible, you wouldn't know the main difference between the followers of Yah and the pagans. The Israelites were commanded not to follow the way of the heathens. They were commanded to not worship their Elohim Yahweh in the way that these other nations worship their gods. They were called to be set apart. And I hope you read Deuteronomy 12:1-4. They were told not to worship Yahweh with such things and to break down all their altars. So beware of false gods. There we are again in Deuteronomy 12:29-32, that you shall not worship Yahweh in that way. He hates that way. He hates their gods. So he says, whatever I command you, be careful to observe it, and do not add to it or take away from it. So I hope the next video next week, I hope, will be how did paganism enter the church? So thank you for being here today, and hopefully I'll be back real soon.